You can see, this is me. This is how creative I am. Nice big blank sheet with my name on. And to be frank, that's about as good at design as it comes in my expertise. I'm a physiotherapist. I trained in the University of East London, right in Stratford, right where the Olympic site is. Actually, the Olympic site wasn't there when I was training. There was a big industrial nothing, really, and it's quite remarkable. If you get anybody going to the Olympics, but it's quite remarkable that what's happened in that site, and quite remarkable what's happened to me since I left that site in 1997. I trained really for the NHS. That's what happens when you train to be a physio. As you come out of school, I actually did it as a mature student, so I already had 4 kids, so it was a bit chaotic, and to put it mildly. And I finished my studies, as most people do, and expected to walk into a job in the NHS, which I did. And you tend to find that most physiotherapists, occupational therapists, that sort of career has been funded by the NHS, so off you go into the hospital. So you're not in any shape or form encouraged to be creative about how you present yourself at all. It's very much about the corporate identity of the health system. And they do the advertising for you, and they do it so well that they've got very long waiting lists, so it's obviously working. So then, as in, perhaps not quite so much at recent time, because the NHS job market has changed considerably, and I now do a mentoring programme for new graduates who want to come in straight into private practice. But at the time, what was quite traditional in England, certainly, not so much in New Zealand, Australia, but particularly in the UK, was that you would gradually build a private practice based on the fact that you knew a consultant, orthopaedic surgeon, plastic surgeon, who'd sort of slip you a few private patients that you could do on a Tuesday night, and then you gradually build it up. And that was really how a huge proportion of private practices started. So you have a whole sector full of NHS uniformed people who wear blue and white and function under that banner, who suddenly come into a business and have no idea. They don't train physiotherapists in business at all. So osteopaths, chiropractors, massage therapists, sports injury people, in their degree programs often have a bit of business training. We have none. So you hit the ground running. So about between 1999 and 2000, I was starting to see those private patients outside the NHS and doing a couple of evenings and working full time. And it was quite exhausting to do that. And it was obviously becoming a bit more lucrative to do the private patients. I was beginning to realise that actually this could work. I could actually have a bit more flexibility. I'm not a very good employee. I didn't particularly want to go up the ranks of the NHS, which then would make me a manager of people and not a hands-on physio, which was my interest and why I trained to do it in the first place. So I started coming out of the NHS part-time. Can I just grab that water? I still left it over there. I'll do it, thank you. So, unaccustomed as I am to public speaking, it's one of those, isn't it? So I started to come out of the NHS. So then I've got the problem of I've got to turn a regular, reliable salary into a regular, reliable income from another source, which is, and I'm sure there are plenty of you sitting there who've done that in whichever thing you're doing. So you're very good at the thing. I would say I'm very good at the thing I do, but the other skills needed development. So I was fortunate enough that Business Link existed at the time. It's now been dismantled into a different government bodies and things, but it had some money, a bit like the opportunity that's being presented to you today, for new start-up businesses at that point to look at how they would involve creative industry. So I took advantage of that. I went to see a very nice man called Nick Wilkinson, who was allocated as my advisor, and the ongoing relationship that I had with him lasted about 5 or 6 years and took me from that position of very hesitant little bit of part-time practice into a proper business, and £120,000 turnover and 4 or 5 other people working for me and things happening, and a full-time income from the thing that I really enjoyed doing, and no more NHS protocols and red tape. So I would say it was very successful. Within that partnership, I was able to not only increase the level of patients, I was taking my income, and I was able to do that because I had the collaboration with a very nice lady called Julie Curtis at Icicle Design in Leigh-on-Sea. Now, Leigh-on-Sea is a funny little place. It's very densely populated. It sits on the Thames estuary. It really is Essex man country, and there's lots of orange people. Have you seen the Essex orange people? So you've got, but what's really unique about Leigh-on-Sea and Southend-on-Sea is that it's full of physio practices. So there's an enormous amount of competition. So how do you take a a one-person, one-man band who's got a good reputation with a few referrers and turn that into something which is a reliable source of referral. So I hadn't got a clue. So I went and sat and talked to Julie. Now Julie took a brief. That's what the creatives call it. It's a brief. I call it an assessment. You might call it something else. What would you call it in your business? But you've got a customer coming towards you and you're going to find out what they want from you. Now, if I can liken that to the way I do an assessment, because it's quite useful, if you're going to put together your project ideas, you need to have a little bit, would have been very useful to have a little bit of an insight into what it is that the other person is trying to tell you. So if somebody comes to see me with a backache, they don't necessarily know what it is I need to know. So I guide that, I could be there for forever. So I have to guide the conversation, otherwise I'll never get through assessment treatment in an hour. There's a lot to find out. So the priorities of what I'm trying to find out guide my questioning of the person in front of me. Now we do that in physiotherapy in a very structured way. We start with a subjective history taking. How is it for you? What's wrong? What makes it worse? What makes it better? When did it start? How did it happen? The mechanism of the injury, how it happened. So the same thing applies. Julie was trying to find out where I was at, how I'd got there, where I wanted to go, what the problems were. So where did she start? What was I after? And she listened very carefully. We then, in physio, we would then move on to an objective assessment. So what can I measure? So how much money was I making? How much money did I need to make? How many newspaper articles had I ever had? What colours did I like? What was the image of the business? Same as with the back pain, can I measure? Oh, I get to there, 20 degrees of movement, it hurts. So my business was at the 20 degrees of movement and it hurts moment, and I wanted to be able to touch the floor. So she's finding out how and why this business is where it is and what can she do to help it. So what she really listened to was the fact that I wanted to promote myself, and I knew there was lots of competition from other physios. So one of the things I said to her was, actually, I don't want to see myself necessarily in competition with the other physios, but I do want to give those osteopaths, chiropractors a run for their money, because I think we're better than them. I can say, I hope there's no osteopaths, chiropractors in the room. But if there are, we'll give you a run for the money, because they've had their business training at college and they're already better at it than we are. One of the things they do is that they have much better ways of getting people to keep coming back. But what we do, and what I said to Julie at the time was, we're in the business of getting people better. We want to get them better. We are trained for the NHS, which has got a limited budget, and because of that, we are obliged in the hospitals to get people better in 4 to 6 sessions. And you've got a senior manager breathing down your neck if you've given someone 7 sessions, because the NHS can't afford it, and there's a big waiting list. So it does create a treatment method which is about effectiveness. How quickly can I get you better? So if you go and see, I'm really doing a good job of selling physio to you, aren't I? If you go and see a physio today with a pain in your finger, your back, your head, anywhere else, they will be looking at how quickly can they get you better. Now that's a good marketing tool, and I didn't realise when I was talking to Julie just how much that came across. And that was what she picked up on, was this, we're going to get people better. So I've got some pictures in here. This was the clinic, which I was just about to take over. Very boring. It was a slimming clinic, but this was my side of the clinic. And so she came up with, well, let's give them a blast of colour. Now, can you see that it says, oh, that's better, all over it? So she took basically a very boring business card that looked a bit like that on the green one on that side, which was all right. And she said, I can't get this, oh, that's better out of my head. So I'm sitting there with a very boring expectation of this rather professional, clinical, serious, almost a solicitor-looking navy blue NHS logo thing in my head of this is what physios do when they're in business. And she goes bright pink and, oh, that's better. Now, I've now used that, oh, that's better, for 10 years. And it absolutely is the thing that people remember. They say, I've got one of your cards, it's got, oh, that's better on it, hasn't it? And it really works. Now, I didn't come up with that. The creative person who I'm match funded and in a project and most of it, she came up with that, and I will be forever grateful to her for that, because it really works. And it's just a simple thing, but it's something that creative people are looking at you as an objective outsider, perhaps better at than you are yourself. I can say, oh, I'm a really good physio and I'll get you better, and she puts it on paper. I didn't think to do that. So we've worked together over the years. She redesigned everything. I don't know, it doesn't show up very well in yellow, but you can see how the ooze become a sort of a spine or a sort of a flexible shape, and she came up with all this very nice colour. Now, one of the things I would say is that is that she absolutely grasped what it was we were doing on a local basis. We'd sent a photographer down to the beach on the estuary with all the mud and all the cockle boats and all the rest of it, and we took about 5 o'clock one morning, so there was no one else on the beach, and we had a bunch of kids, a pregnant woman, an elderly chap. We had a load of, because I do a lot of hand therapy, we had everybody practically standing on their hands to take pictures of their hands on the beach. And the website at that point became local. It was, this is Leon C and this is the physio that will get you better. So we used photography, we used colour, we used new words, and I also had some money towards PR. So I had a very nice lady called Deborah Jeffries from Upfront Marketing, and she was PR, so she got me in the newspaper. Now, the one thing I would say at this point, if you're even thinking about doing this project, is grab now every piece of paper that you have about yourself, because the one thing I couldn't find was all the silly things I'd done before. I've got one newspaper article which is really boring. It's just writing, and it says, how can physio help that? And then suddenly it turns into bright colours. And what Deborah was very good at was writing in a way that the newspapers want to see. So I would say, oh, we're doing something on backs, and she'd say, great, can you put a uniform on, and can you have a spine? And she would get the newspaper photographers to my clinic to take a picture to talk about National Back Pain Week or something, and I couldn't do that on my own. It's really difficult to take all those things, keep treating the patients, do the accounts, work out the tax return, feed the children at the end of the day, and create an article. Because you can write in the way that you write as a butcher, baker, candlestick maker, but you can't write in the way that a PR person writes for a newspaper, and that's invaluable. I could probably do it now because I've been watching it for 10 years. I'd have a better stab at it, but it was well worth that investment at the beginning. So everything we did had started to look a bit more sort of corporate. The thing I have learnt most is that these things evolve. So you look back on them, and when I look back on some of them, you think, oh, did we really do that? But even this was a download. I don't know if you can see that side. Can you see any bubbles over there, or is it just plain? I don't think it's photographed. But this was for the GPs, and even the thing for the GPs had the "oh, that's better" on it, because we sort of went, oh, that's a bit, does it seem too flippant? But actually, it works. They remember it, so which is useful. So everything we did. Then we thought, aha, I need a new car. I need a cheap new car. So we sort of thought, okay, well, let's have a cheap new car. And I've seen them with EasyJet on them. So the next thing was we had a Physio on the move car, which worked really well. And actually, you thought it was going to be pink. Yeah, well, I thought, I'm not driving around in a pink car. So we changed the colours, and I really regret changing the colours, because I think pink would have been a lot better, but we changed all the colours, and we changed but we stuck with the "oh, that's better" and the O's and the things. And people, everywhere I went in that car, I tell you what, don't have an affair with anybody if you're driving around in that car. And don't pick your nose, and don't swear, and don't cut anybody up, because they go, oh yeah, there's the phone number. Yeah, exactly. So, but it really worked, that car. Wherever I was parked, somebody would phone and say, how did you hear about me? Saw your car parked outside somewhere. And you think, oh, so it really did work. That was a very measurable way of finding out where people come. And again, don't ever forget, I mean, it's like maybe teaching you to suck eggs, but don't forget to ask. If you start on this project and it's going to open up new doors, don't forget to ask when people, all those phone calls come in, all those new customers, how did you hear about us? Because you want to better measure. Go back to that objective measure. Has this project worked? Well, this one worked because we kept asking the question. If you don't ask the question, you never know where your customers come from. So we went red. We sort of fiddled with colour. We made all sorts of mistakes, really. When you look at it, you think, well, we made some mistakes. These were the newspaper. This was half a page of a newspaper ad. So instead of booking the top half of a newspaper, we went down the side of the newspaper on the basis that people could, if they wanted it, they could sort of easily tear it out. You just tear the page. And the black and white showed up really well on the edge of the newspaper. It was easy to, you sort of made it an opening page of the paper. And it will always, don't even bother to pay a local newspaper unless you're on the right-hand side of the paper. Nobody reads the left-hand side of a newspaper. That's wasted. So if you can't get even a little advert on the right-hand side of the paper is worth 10 times more than anything on the left-hand side of the paper. It's just, people just flick through them. So I learned stuff that, I didn't know. We went looking for opportunities to get that in the right place, and there's the "all that's better" all the time. So this takes me to my next, can I go back one? Yeah, there was so we got to this, all of this has evolved over several years. I haven't read any of my notes, I've probably missed all the best bits. I've had a lovely ongoing relationship with Icicle Design. Julie is one of those people that this little project, I say little project, it could be £10,000 a project, couldn't it, if it's 5,000, is not just a one-off. If you can find somebody local who understands what you do, and